Some people cross your life for a reason. Others arrive like accidents, right when everything is about to fall apart. And sometimes the most dangerous choice you make feels exactly like salvation. Before we begin, subscribing costs nothing, and it helps this channel grow so we can keep sharing stories like this. Now, let's begin. The message appeared on Elena's phone while she was still standing inside the courthouse. You just made a very stupid move. Her breath caught, sharp and shallow, as if the air around her had suddenly thickened. She didn't need to check the number. She already knew who it was from. Across the room, Victor Langford was smiling. He stood near the exit, surrounded by people who laughed a little too easily at his quiet remarks. His suit was flawless, his posture relaxed. To anyone watching, he looked like a man who had just wrapped up an ordinary legal inconvenience. Elena knew better. She slipped her phone into her purse and forced herself to walk, heels clicking against the polished floor. Her hands were steady, her shoulders straight. Years of practice had taught her how to look composed when everything inside her was unraveling. "Ms. Brooks?" the judge called, glancing down at the file. "You're certain you wish to proceed?" The question echoed louder than it should have. Elena swallowed. For a brief moment her mind betrayed her, flashing images she had tried so hard to keep buried. A small apartment with unpaid bills stacked on the counter, her mother's pill organizer missing doses because refills were too expensive. The quiet fear that followed her everywhere, like a shadow she could never quite outrun. She lifted her chin. "Yes," she said, "I'm certain." Victor's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. As the gavel struck, Elena felt it in her chest, that unmistakable shift. The sense that a line had been crossed and there was no going back. The courtroom emptied slowly, conversations buzzed, papers shuffled. Elena waited until the room thinned before gathering her folder and heading toward the exit. She was halfway down the hallway when she heard his voice behind her. "Elena!" She didn't stop. Victor fell into step beside her, his tone low, measured, meant only for her. "This didn't have to happen." She kept walking. "You say that like you didn't force my hand." He let out a quiet chuckle, almost amused. "I offered protection, stability. You chose drama." She stopped then, slowly, turned to face him. "Control isn't protection," she said, "and I'm done mistaking it for care." For a fraction of a second the charm slipped. Something colder surfaced in his eyes. "Be careful," Victor murmured. "People who walk away from me tend to regret it." Elena held his gaze. Her voice didn't shake. "I already regret staying." She turned and walked away before he could respond. Outside, the sky was overcast, the city washed in dull gray. Elena stepped onto the sidewalk, pulling her phone from her purse as it began to ring. The name on the screen made her heart drop. She answered immediately. "Hello?" "Elena," the nursing aide said, breathless. "It's your mom. She collapsed. The ambulance just left. They're taking her to St. Jude's." The world tilted. Elena pressed her palm against the cold stone wall beside her. "Is she conscious?" "I'm not sure," the aide replied. "Her blood pressure was dangerously high. You need to get here as soon as you can." "I'm coming," Elena said, already moving. "I'm on my way." She ended the call and started walking fast, then faster, then running. Her car was parked 3 blocks away, 3 blocks that suddenly felt impossibly long. Her mind raced with images she didn't want to see. Her mother lying still. Doctors speaking in careful tones, bills she had no way to pay. She didn't see the man stepping out of the coffee shop until she crashed straight into him. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. Her folder flew from her hands, papers scattering across the sidewalk. Her phone slipped, skidding to a stop near the curb. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Elena blurted, crouching immediately. "I wasn't looking. I'm late. The man knelt at the same time. Their hands reached for the same sheet of paper. His fingers brushed hers. It was brief, accidental. But Elena felt it all the same, a strange, electric awareness that made her pause. She looked up. He had calm eyes, steady, the kind that didn't rush, even when the world around them clearly was. His expression held concern, not irritation. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, I need to get to the hospital." He gathered the remaining papers quickly, handing them back to her. When she took them, he noticed the slight tremor in her hands. "Someone you love?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "My mom." He stood, glancing toward the street. "Your car?" 3 blocks, she said. "I can run." "You don't have to," she hesitated. "What?" "I can drive you," he said simply. Elena stared at him. A stranger, a quiet voice, a black sedan idling at the curb. "I don't—" She stopped herself. Time was slipping through her fingers. "I don't even know your name." "Alexander," he said. "Alexander Monroe." Something in the way he said it wasn't impressive or performative, just honest. She looked toward the hospital direction again, panic rising, then back at him. "Okay," she said. "Yes, please." Alexander opened the passenger door without another word. Inside the car, the noise of the city faded. He pulled into traffic smoothly, hands steady on the wheel. Elena clasped her folder to her chest, staring straight ahead. Her thoughts tangled between Victor's threat and her mother's fragile health. After a moment, Alexander spoke. "You came out of a courthouse like someone who just survived a storm." She let out a humorless breath. "That obvious?" "Only to someone who knows the look," he replied. She glanced at him. "And you do?" His jaw tightened slightly. Enough. Silence settled between them again, heavy but not uncomfortable. As the hospital came into view, Elena felt something unfamiliar stir beneath the fear, not relief, not hope, but the quiet sense that this moment mattered. She didn't know why, she didn't know how. She only knew that meeting Alexander Monroe was not an accident, and she had no idea yet that he was about to step directly into the war Victor Langford had just declared, or that Alexander was carrying a secret of his own, one that would change everything. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and quiet fear. Elena followed the nurse down the corridor, her steps quick but unsteady, Alexander a few paces behind her. The fluorescent lights above felt harsher than the sky outside, buzzing softly, as if indifferent to everything that mattered. "She's in room 312, the nurse said, slowing near the door. "The doctor will be with you shortly." Elena nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you." As the nurse left, Elena hesitated with her hand on the door handle. For just a second she closed her eyes, gathering herself. Alexander noticed. "You don't have to be strong in there," he said quietly. "Just be present." She looked at him, surprised. "You say that like it's easy." "It isn't," he replied, "but it's enough." She took a breath and pushed the door open. Her mother lay in the hospital bed, smaller than Elena remembered. Gray hair fanned against the pillow, chest rising and falling in shallow, measured breaths. Machines beeped softly beside her, each sound landing like a countdown Elena didn't want to hear. "Oh, Mom," Elena whispered, crossing the room in 3 quick steps. She took her mother's hand, careful of the IV. "I'm here." Her mother's eyes fluttered open. A faint smile appeared. "You look tired," she murmured. Elena let out a shaky laugh. "You scared me half to death. And that's your first comment?" The older woman squeezed her fingers weakly. "Means I'm still me." Tears finally slipped down Elena's cheeks. She brushed them away quickly, embarrassed. From the doorway, Alexander paused, unsure if he should step in or wait outside. Elena noticed him and gestured gently. "It's okay, you can come in." He entered slowly, keeping his distance, hands loosely at his sides. Her mother looked at him with curiosity. "Who's this?" "A friend," Elena said after a brief pause. "He drove me here." Her mother studied Alexander's face, then nodded approvingly. "That was kind." He offered a small smile. "I'm glad I could help." The doctor arrived soon after, explaining the situation in calm, measured tones. A severe spike in blood pressure. Stress-related, medication adjustments, monitoring overnight. Elena listened, nodding, absorbing every word, but the unspoken message echoed louder than anything else. This can't keep happening. When the doctor left, the room fell quiet again. Elena sank into the chair beside the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "You should go home and rest," her mother said softly. "You look worse than I do." Elena shook her head. "I'm not leaving." Alexander cleared his throat gently. "I can step out for a bit," he said. "Give you some space." Elena looked up at him. For a moment she hesitated. Then she shook her head. "No, it's okay. You don't have to." He nodded once and moved to the window, giving them privacy without leaving. Minutes passed, then more. Eventually, Elena's mother drifted back to sleep. Elena watched her breathing for a long moment before finally standing, stretching stiff muscles. "I should get some coffee," she murmured, mostly to herself. "I'll walk with you," Alexander said. In the hallway, the tension she'd been holding finally loosened just a little. "Thank you," she said quietly as they walked, "for everything. You didn't have to do any of this." "I know," he replied. She glanced at him. "Then, why did you?" He didn't answer right away. They stopped at the vending machines, the harsh glow reflecting off the polished floor. "Because sometimes," he said slowly, "helping someone else is the only way to stay human." She studied his face, sensing there was more beneath the words, something carefully guarded. She decided not to press. They sat with paper cups of coffee that tasted like cardboard. Eleanor wrapped her hands around the warmth, letting it ground her. "You came out of that courthouse like you were bracing for impact," Alexander said. "Someone powerful on the other side of that door?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Victor Langford." His posture shifted almost imperceptibly. "I know the name." That caught her attention. "You do?" "Unfortunately," he said, "he's influential." "That's one word for it," she replied bitterly. "He doesn't like losing." Alexander watched her closely. "And he just did." She let out a humorless laugh. "Then I'm in trouble." "People like him don't stop," Alexander said quietly. "They escalate." She looked down at her coffee. "I don't have the luxury of backing down any more." Silence stretched between them, heavier now. After a moment, Alexander spoke again. "Where will you go tonight?" She stiffened. "Home." "Alone?" "Yes." He hesitated. "If you need anything, a ride, help with groceries, someone to check in." Elena smiled faintly. "You're very kind, Alexander, but you've already done more than enough." He met her gaze, something unresolved flickering in his eyes. "I'm not very good at doing nothing." That made her smile for real, just a little. Back in the room, Elena settled into the chair again. Alexander lingered near the door. "I should go," he said, "but I'd like to see you again, when things are less chaotic." She looked up at him, surprised by how much she wanted to say yes. "I'd like that too," she said softly. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a card and placed it gently on the table beside her. "In case you change your mind." Their fingers brushed again as she picked it up. Another accidental touch. Another quiet awareness. Alexander paused at the door. "Good night, Elena." "Good night," she replied. As he left, Elena leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. Outside the hospital room, Alexander stopped in the hallway, his calm expression finally cracking. He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. He had not planned to meet her. He had not planned to care. And he had definitely not planned to see Victor Langford's name enter her life again, because Victor didn't know it yet. But Elena Brooks had just stepped into a world Alexander Monroe had spent years trying to escape, and Victor Langford was not the only secret Alexander was hiding. The next morning arrived too quickly. Elena woke in the hospital chair with a stiff neck and a phone buzzing softly in her hand. For one disoriented second, she forgot where she was. Then she heard the steady beeping of the monitor, and turned toward the bed. Her mother was awake. "Elena," she murmured, eyes clearer now, "you fell asleep again." Elena smiled, relief washing over her. "You're talking. That's a good sign." "Bossy, too," her mother added. "Also a good sign." They shared a quiet laugh before the nurse entered to check vitals. Everything was stable, improved. The word felt fragile, but welcome. When the nurse left, Elena's phone buzzed again. A message. Unknown number. "You shouldn't have brought strangers into this." Her pulse spiked. She glanced toward the door, half expecting to see Victor standing there. Her mother noticed the shift in her expression. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Elena said quickly. "Just work stress." Her mother studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You've always said that when it's something else." Elena squeezed her hand. "I'll tell you later." She stepped into the hallway, heart pounding, and dialed the number back. It rang once, then stopped. No answer. She lowered the phone slowly, dread settling in her stomach. At the end of the corridor, she spotted Alexander. He stood near the nurse's station, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, speaking quietly with a doctor. The scene felt strangely out of place, like he belonged there more than she did. As if sensing her gaze, he turned. Their eyes met. Something eased inside her. He excused himself and walked toward her. "Morning, how is she?" "Better," Elena said. "Thank you for coming back." "I told you I wasn't good at doing nothing." She hesitated, then showed him her phone. "He's watching." Alexander read the message, his jaw tightening. Victor doesn't like unpredictability. That's putting it mildly. "Has he threatened you directly?" "Not yet," she said. "He prefers atmosphere." Alexander nodded. "That fits." She studied him. "You really do know him?" "Yes," he replied simply. They walked toward the elevators together. Elena didn't realize she'd started matching her pace to his until he slowed to stay beside her. In the elevator, the silence felt heavier. "Alexander," she said finally, "you don't have to keep helping me." "I know." "Then why are you?" The elevator chimed softly as it descended. He didn't answer until the doors opened. "Because the last time Victor Langford decided someone was expendable," he said quietly, "I looked the other way." Elena stopped walking. He turned to face her fully now. "I won't do that again." Something in his voice made her chest tighten. "What happened?" "Someone got hurt," he said. "Badly." She searched his face. "Was it your fault?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "And no." They stepped outside into the cool morning air. The city felt different in daylight, less threatening, less forgiving. "My life is already falling apart," Elena said. "I don't need to be dragged into someone else's past." "I wouldn't let that happen." "You don't get to decide that," she said softly. He nodded. "Fair." They stood there for a moment, neither moving. Then Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "This is for your mom's medication. No loans, no strings." Elena's eyes widened. "I can't take that." "You can," he said, "and you will." "Because this is me making something right." Her pride flared. "You barely know me." "I know enough." She shook her head, emotion rising dangerously close to the surface. "I don't want to owe you." "You don't," he said gently. "You owe yourself some peace." The words hit harder than she expected. She looked away, blinking rapidly. "I'll pay you back." He smiled faintly. "If that helps you sleep." Their hands brushed as she took the envelope. This time, neither pulled away immediately. The moment lingered, soft and charged, until Elena cleared her throat. "I should get back to her." "Of course." As she turned to leave, Alexander spoke again. "Elena, Victor won't stop, but he's not invincible." She glanced over her shoulder. "Neither am I." "True," he said, "but you're not alone." She didn't reply, but the words followed her down the hallway. Across town, Victor Langford stood in his office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He read the latest report slowly, lips pressed into a thin line. Alexander Monroe. The name lingered longer than the others. "So," Victor murmured, setting the file down, "you've decided to reappear?" He smiled and began to plan. The days that followed settled into an uneasy rhythm. Elena split her time between the hospital, her apartment, and a growing sense that her life was being quietly watched. Victor didn't call. He didn't threaten her openly. He didn't need to. Silence was his weapon. Alexander, however, was constant, not intrusive, not overwhelming, just there. He drove her to the hospital when she was too tired to trust herself behind the wheel. He waited in the parking lot during long doctor visits, reading reports on his tablet, glancing up every time the doors opened. He brought groceries without asking what she needed, somehow choosing exactly the things her mother liked. "You didn't have to remember that," Elena said one evening as she unpacked the bag. Alexander shrugged lightly. "You mentioned it once." That caught her off guard. She paused, holding a carton of soup in her hands. "Most people don't listen that closely." "I do," he replied. The words stayed with her longer than she expected. One night, after her mother finally fell asleep, Elena stepped outside the hospital to get some air. The sky was clear, the city lights softer than usual. Alexander was leaning against the car, jacket draped over one arm. "You look like you're about to collapse," he said. She smiled faintly. "You're very observant." He held the jacket out. "You're cold." She hesitated, then took it. The fabric was warm, carrying his scent, clean and faintly familiar now. She wrapped it around herself, surprised by how comforting it felt. They stood side by side in silence. "Tell me something," Elena said finally. "What do you do when you're not rescuing strangers outside courthouses?" A corner of his mouth lifted. "I advise companies on risk, damage control, quiet problems." "That sounds ominous." "It can be," he admitted, "but it's also about preventing people from getting hurt." She studied him. "And yet, you said you once looked the other way." "Yes," he said. "I thought staying neutral would keep things from getting worse." "And it didn't." "No." She turned to face him. "Is that why you're helping me?" He met her gaze. "Partly." "And the rest?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes searched hers as if weighing honesty against caution. "Because when I saw you run out of that courthouse," he said slowly, "I recognized the look. The moment when you realize you're on your own and still choose to stand your ground." Her chest tightened. "That wasn't bravery, that was exhaustion." "Sometimes," he said softly. "They look the same." The silence between them shifted, warmer, closer. Elena laughed quietly. "You make everything sound heavier than it is." "Oh, only the things that matter." She shook her head, smiling despite herself. For a brief moment the world felt smaller, simpler. And then her phone buzzed. A photo appeared on the screen, her apartment building, taken from across the street. Elena's blood ran cold. Alexander noticed immediately. "What is it?" She handed him the phone without a word. His expression hardened. "He's escalating." "I didn't think he'd move this fast." "He didn't," Alexander said. "He waited until you felt safe." That word hit harder than the threat. "Safe," Elena swallowed. "What do I do?" He didn't hesitate. "You don't go home alone." "I can't stay here forever." "No," he agreed, "but you can stay somewhere secure." She looked at him. "With you?" "Yes." The word hung between them heavier than either expected. Before she could respond, a thought surfaced, quiet but insistent. "If this story is touching you in some way, you're not alone. This channel exists for people who feel deeply." Elena took a slow breath. "Okay," she said. "Just until my mom is discharged." Alexander nodded. "That's all I'm offering." That night, his apartment felt nothing like she imagined. No excess, no cold luxury, just clean lines, soft lighting, and an unexpected warmth. Books on the shelves. Framed photographs turned face down, as if intentionally hidden. "You don't live like someone who needs to impress people," she said. "I learned a long time ago that appearances attract the wrong kind of attention." He showed her the guest room, then paused at the door. "If you need anything, I'm right down the hall." She nodded. "Thank you." Later, unable to sleep, Elena wandered into the kitchen. She found Alexander there, leaning against the counter, staring out the window. "Can't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "Too many thoughts." "Same?" They sat at the small table, sharing quiet conversation that drifted from memories to regrets, from laughter to silence. At one point, Elena reached for her glass of water and knocked it over. Water spilled. She gasped. "I'm so sorry." "I've got it," Alexander said, grabbing a towel. Their hands collided. She laughed softly, embarrassed. He smiled, eyes lingering a second longer than necessary. The air changed. Elena became suddenly aware of how close he was, of the way his voice dropped when he spoke to her, of how his gaze softened when he thought she wasn't looking. She stepped back, heart racing. "I should go to bed." "Yes," he said, though he didn't move right away. "You should." Neither of them did. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world held its breath. Then Elena turned and walked away, pulse loud in her ears. Down the hall, Alexander stood still, jaw tight, forcing himself not to follow, because wanting her was dangerous. And Victor Langford was already watching. Elena woke to silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that felt deliberate. She lay still for a moment in the guest room, listening. No traffic noise, no distant sirens, just the faint hum of the city waking up somewhere far below. She checked her phone. 3 missed calls, all from her building manager. Her chest tightened. In the kitchen, Alexander stood by the counter, already dressed, coffee untouched in his hand. He looked up the moment she entered. "You got the calls, too," he said. She nodded. "What happened?" "Your apartment was accessed overnight," he replied carefully. "No forced entry. Nothing stolen." Elena's stomach dropped. "Then why call me?" "Because someone wanted you to know they were there." She pressed a hand to the counter, steadying herself. "Victor?" "Yes?" Anger flared, sharp and sudden. "He has no right." "He doesn't need rights," Alexander said quietly. "He uses leverage." She looked at him. "You speak like this isn't new." "It isn't." They drove to the building together. The hallway smelled faintly of cleaning solution, the kind landlords used when they wanted problems to disappear quietly. Inside her apartment, everything looked almost normal, almost. The picture frame on the shelf was turned face down. Her mother's old scarf lay folded neatly on the chair, and on the kitchen table, a single envelope waited. Elena didn't touch it. Alexander did. Inside was a note, short, precise. "You're borrowing courage from the wrong man." Elena laughed once, brittle. "He thinks I'm weak." "He thinks you're isolated," Alexander corrected. "That's different." She turned to him. "Then stop standing between us. He's using you." Alexander held her gaze. "I won't." "Why?" she demanded. "What did Victor do to you?" He exhaled slowly. "You deserve the truth." They left the apartment and sat in the car, doors closed, the world sealed off. Alexander stared at the steering wheel for a long moment before speaking. "Years ago," he said, "I worked for Victor Langford." Elena froze. "You said you advised companies." "I did. I do," he said. "Victor was one of my biggest clients." Her voice dropped. "You helped him." "Yes?" The word landed heavy between them. "I helped him bury problems," Alexander continued. "Lawsuits, whistleblowers, people who knew too much." Elena's throat tightened, including someone who got hurt. He nodded once. "A woman, she tried to expose him. I was asked to discredit her." Elena whispered, "Did you?" "No," he said. "But I delayed. I hesitated. I told myself someone else would stop it. And no one did." "She lost everything," he said quietly. her career, her reputation, eventually her life. Elena's eyes burned, and you stayed silent. Yes. The confession sat between them like a fracture. That's why you can't walk away now, Elena said softly. That's why I won't. Ayo. She turned toward the window, fighting the swirl of emotions inside her. If Victor finds out you're helping me— He already knows, Alexander said. He's testing how far I'm willing to go. She looked back at him. And how far are you willing to go? His jaw tightened. Far enough to finish what I should have done back then. They returned to the hospital later that day. Elena's mother was scheduled for discharge the following morning. As Elena stepped out into the hallway to speak with the nurse, Alexander stayed behind in the room. He didn't notice the man at the end of the corridor at first. Victor Langford leaned casually against the wall, phone in hand, as if he belonged there. Alexander stiffened. Well, Victor said smoothly, sliding the phone into his pocket, this is nostalgic. Alexander's voice was steady. You shouldn't be here. I disagree, Victor replied. Hospitals are excellent places for reminders. Alexander stepped closer. Stay away from her. Victor smiled. You don't get to protect anyone anymore, not after what you allowed. I won't let you do this again. Victor leaned in slightly. You already are. From the doorway, Elena watched them. The tension was unmistakable. She stepped forward. What's going on? Victor turned, surprise flashing briefly before his smile returned. Elena, you look well. Her hands clenched. Leave. Victor's gaze flicked to Alexander. You didn't tell her everything, did you? Alexander said nothing. Elena looked between them. Tell me what? Victor's smile widened. Ask him why I still own him. Silence fell. Elena's voice trembled despite her effort. Alexander? He met her eyes, guilt unmistakable. I should have told you sooner. Victor straightened. Enjoy your evening, he said lightly. This story isn't over. He walked away, footsteps echoing down the hall. Elena turned to Alexander, her heart pounding. Is it true? Yes, he said. I once helped him. Her breath caught. Then why should I trust you? He swallowed. Because I'm risking everything to stop him now. She stepped back, shaken. I need time, he nodded. Take all of it. She walked back into her mother's room, leaving Alexander alone in the hallway. And for the first time since meeting Elena Brooks, Alexander Monroe wasn't sure love would be enough to save them. Because Victor Langford didn't just want control, he wanted revenge. The hospital room felt different that morning. Lighter. Elena stood by the window while her mother signed the discharge papers, sunlight spilling across the floor. For the first time in days, her shoulders weren't tense. Her breath came easier, but her heart wasn't calm. Alexander hadn't come back, not after the hallway, not after the truth. Her mother watched her quietly. You're waiting for someone. Elena didn't turn. I don't know what I'm doing. Her mother smiled softly. That's usually when the truth shows up. A nurse entered with a folder. Ms. Brooks, there's a gentleman asking for you downstairs. Elena's pulse spiked. Who? The nurse hesitated. He said his name is Alexander. Elena closed her eyes. In the lobby, Alexander stood near the large glass doors, hands clasped loosely in front of him. He looked composed, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. She stopped a few steps away. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. I know, he replied. But I couldn't leave without finishing this. She crossed her arms. Finishing what? He met her gaze. Telling the truth, all of it, publicly. Her breath caught. Alexander, I've already sent everything, he continued. Documents, emails, recordings, to regulators, to the press, to the board. She stared at him. That will destroy you. He nodded. Yes. And Victor? He won't walk away from this. As if summoned by his name, Victor Langford stepped through the revolving doors. His smile was tight this time, controlled, dangerous. You always did have a flair for drama, Victor said, but this is reckless. Alexander didn't move. It's over. Victor's eyes flicked to Elena. You see what happens when you trust broken men? Elena stepped forward, her voice steady. I see what happens when someone finally tells the truth. Victor laughed quietly. Truth doesn't matter without power. That used to be true, Alexander said. Not anymore. Sirens wailed outside. Victor's phone buzzed, then buzzed again. His expression shifted. For the first time, uncertainty cracked through the charm. This isn't finished, he snapped. Alexander's voice was calm. It is? Two investigators entered the lobby, badges visible. Victor froze. Victor Langford, one of them said. We need you to come with us. Victor looked at Alexander one last time. You'll regret this. Alexander didn't look away. I already lived with that regret. I won't anymore. Victor was escorted out, his footsteps echoing hollowly across the marble floor. Silence followed. Elena turned to Alexander, her eyes shining. You didn't have to burn your life down. He smiled faintly. I wanted to build something honest instead. She stepped closer. With me? He searched her face. Only if you still want me. She didn't answer with words. She reached for him. Their hands met, fingers interlacing naturally, like they'd always known where to fit. Alexander leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their kiss was soft at first. Careful, then deeper, warmer, filled with everything they'd held back. When they pulled apart, Elena rested her forehead against his. We'll figure it out, he smiled, relief flooding his eyes. Together. Weeks later, Elena's apartment was filled with light again, new locks, new plants by the window. Her mother laughed more, slept better. Alexander stood beside Elena on the balcony, city lights glowing below. You still think meeting me was an accident? He asked. She smiled. No. He kissed her temple. Neither do I. Some love stories begin with certainty. Others begin with courage. And this one began when two people chose truth over fear and found each other in the process. If this story stayed with you in any way, this channel is for you. Stories like this are made for people who still believe in connection. If you enjoyed this journey, subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments how this story made you feel, from 0 to 10. Your support helps these stories continue.